I'm Robb Allan. I'm a sound engineer. I make some bands. I'm currently out on tour mixing a Radiohead and Massive Attack. As well as being a sound engineer, I also work for Avid. I'm in the design team of Avid. And actually I worked on the design of this console. I work on the workflow and the kind of hardware layout of the consoles for Avid. So I have two jobs. I've been very interested in the concept of immersive audio for a long time now, and I really was curious to have a play with it in a real life situation. It's kind of easy to work in a studio situation, small speakers in a small controlled space, and I wanted to see how it would feel in a proper size arena, particularly with a view to using it next year on a tour. I was very curious to see the interaction between the console and the soundscape, and to see how that worked. I think we all learned quite a lot today, and I think that the main thing that I learned was you almost have to start over again. You almost have to rip up all the preconceptions that I've had for the last 25 years and start with a clean slate, right? Start with a blank page and reinvent the way that you put a mix together. We only had a few hours today, but I think by the end of it, I'd kind of had a change of mindset, and I think found a way to make the music that I was working on work in an immersive situation. I came here I had one big decision I wanted to make today. I came here to think, is this something that I'm interested in pursuing for the tour next year? So that was a binary decision. That was a yes or a no. Is this something that I think has a possibility for me? And so the first binary decision was yes, I want to pursue it. The expectation I had, I think for me the biggest thing is I spent so many years basically mixing in mono. If you're in an arena like this, I tend to work in arenas, stadiums of recent years. And you work in an environment like this, you end up mixing in mono because most of the audience is only hearing one set of speakers, right? So there's a kind of little golden patch in the middle of the room where people are hearing the left and the right and they're having a stereo image. But actually, if you go to the sides, if you go to the back, if you go to the front, you're basically listening to one speaker or a set of speakers. And I was a little bit tired of mixing in mono. I was a little bit, bored, to tell you the truth, of just not being able to move things in space and have everybody hear it, just only having a few people hear it. So the thing I wanted to explore with this is, can I have a proper image of the audio, but can a lot of people hear it? There's no point in having a perfect image where I'm stood, 500 of them can hear that image. So I wanted to explore how much of the crowd would be able to hear an expanded kind of spatial image of the audio, and I think we got a long way to working that out today. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I think that the biggest thing that you notice is you lose the notion of a point of audio, like a source of the audio. Yeah. So you're always constantly aware of the big, black banana hanging in the ceiling, and that the audio is coming from there. And I think a good way to say it's immersive, even though it's not coming from the sides or it's coming from behind me, I'm immersed in it because it's a big picture in front of me. It's a big audio landscape in front of me that has depth as well. Perhaps the y-axis not as much, but certainly on the x-axis, I had a feeling of width and even height, and then depth to a degree, but there's a limitation to that. But I definitely felt that we'd lost the sound coming from a source. If you closed your eyes, you had no idea where the speakers were. There was just music coming at you. Yeah. We have speaker manufacturers up until this point. I've largely spoken to rental houses and, by extension, system designers, system engineers, and haven't really had anything to offer the creatives, right? Creative people don't care. If it's a brown banana or a black banana or a purple banana, right? It's just a two linearies hanging up. They don't really care. More noise out the back, less noise out the back. But for the first time, there's two things have happened. One is Avid invented the whole notion of virtual sound check. So we spent all day doing a virtual sound check of Massive Attack, right? So basically, the band are on stage, we record it to Pro Tools, we play it back from Pro Tools through the desk, and we can work on the mix. And that enabled us, that was 2004, and that enabled us to produce our live shows in a way that we never could before. So now we can produce our live shows like an album. And as you saw before, I use LTC, and I fire my snapshots of LTC. So this takes it a step further. So now we can get the creatives involved. So now the artist can stand with me while I'm mixing my show and have an opinion about the mix, have an opinion about the kind of relative levels, about the emphasis, about the weight, the volume of the show. And now we've taken it a stage further with this, and then now the artist can go things further forward or to the side or depth or move in during a show. And I can sit here with the artist and work on the whole thing and just work on, actually they can work on a whole landscape. So I'm really excited by the interaction that I'm going to have. I'm really excited by the conversation that I'm going to have with the artists that I work with, offering them a whole other dimension of audio to work with. Yeah. And I'm really excited by what's going to happen when we sit down and try and construct a mix in this new space. Yeah. It could be that they go, well, that sounds weird, right? Or it could be that they think of, and I think this is more likely, they'll think of things that I hadn't thought of, or you hadn't thought of, or any of us hadn't thought of, because they're the artist. Yeah. So they come from left field, they come from oblique angles, and they're not interested in the technology, so in the same way that we are. So it'd be quite interesting to see creative people, what they have in terms of an imagination that maybe we hadn't even, stuff that hadn't even occurred to us to do in this new format. Well, the great thing about the SXL is we have, apart from the virtual sound check, which kind of changed, revolutionized live sound for me, revolutionized my whole workflow, right? I can't imagine working anymore without a virtual sound check. The other thing that Avid brought to live sound was plugins, yeah? So there's an integrated plugin architecture in this desk. If I choose a channel, and here's my plugin, and this will automatically map on the soundscape, right? An X and Y, a spread and a delay and reverb already right here on the desk on a per channel basis. Yeah. So rather than me spending my whole time over here working on the soundscape, I can, on my desk facing in the right direction, have the encoders to hand that I need. Yeah. And then I can store them with a snapshot. So as I run through my snapshots, I have hundreds and hundreds of snapshots of my show, store all of those positional references, the width, the delay, where everything is, and I can store it all in my snapshots. So it means the whole package is integrated. As we go through song by song or verse by verse or chorus by chorus, I can have the audio positioned as an object wherever I want in the mix with width and depth, and control it all from the desk and store it to my snapshots. And as I run through, I'm storing it, moving on, storing it, moving on, storing it, moving on. So I don't have to have a kind of aggregate position. I can have an exact position for each song and for each part of each song. Yeah, so the integration is massively important. My whole working life, I've been based, all of the audio I've worked in has been around bus-based audio, yeah, a left and a right bus, minimum. It's also been around pan, and a volume-based pan at that. So if I pan something left, it's just loud in one speaker and quiet in the other. So that's been a limitation and something that we've worked with over the years. Okay, that's just how it's been. Yeah, I'm used to it. That's my comfort zone. So, as I said earlier, you have to almost reinvent the way that you think about audio. So there's no left and right master to pull up and down. There's no pan to quickly grab to move something around. So you're thinking in a different dimension almost. Instead of thinking of my left and my right, most people are going to be hearing a mix of the two or one or the other. And all of a sudden you're thinking, where do I want this piece of audio to sit within the bigger picture? And then the interesting thing about that is things in their own individual spaces within the audio, you don't have to EQ to the same level. So I found I was, you know, a really good example towards the end was there was a bongo track. This guy playing a bongo, and on my left-right type mix, I'd boosted the high mid to make it cut. It's a really typical thing because everything's coming out the same speakers. So you put a bit high mid to make this thing cut, stick its head through the mix. But because we spaced everything out, all of a sudden you could hear that high boost on the bongos. It sounded harsh. And then a flat, natural, but they still had their own space within the mix. So it's actually quite interesting how if you move things around spatially, you don't have to be so radical with the EQ. I mean, we only had a few hours today, but I suspect I would, if I was going to do this, and it's a long-term project to begin a tour, I would probably start with everything flat again, and move from there, and maybe start without the kind of the dynamic plugins that I've been using as well, because in a way you didn't have to control the dynamics as much. It was okay if people were louder and quieter because they were louder and quieter within their own. You didn't have to have this kind of brick wall limited thing that comes out and everybody's at the correct level all of the time. So the space gives you the ability to make things sound more natural, but also the ability to let them be louder and quieter naturally as well. So one of the things I've disliked about the way that audio's been moving recently is the way that everything is so compressed, it's lost all the human element. And I think it's quite interesting when you open up the audio into 3 dimensions, you can actually bring back the human element that we'd let go or we suppressed. Because if, you know, all of the recordings, all of the concerts are compressed to bits. There's just like the waveform looks like that, like a black oblong. And I'd really like the fact we can make the music sound more natural. Although we're introducing a whole bunch more technology, in a way it makes it, the end result is a more natural audio. It's almost a Zen thing, right? We're applying more technology to something to make it more natural. I've never ever used compression on my left-right bus, or I don't have a limiter, I don't have compression, I don't use any processing on my master bus. Never have, never believed in that. I always want the musicians to volume to kind of come in, ebb and flow, breathe. So I've always been resistant, even if I've been working with an artist whose recorded works are kind of brick wall limited and compressed to bits. I've always felt in live sound, you should let the music breathe because people can see the musicians on stage. Right? They're not listening to it on little headphones through an MP3. There's real people on stage. And I think if the drummer leans into the drum kit and hits it harder, you should be able to hear that as an audience member. It shouldn't just be the compressor compresses it more when he hits the snare hard. If the drummer's hitting the snare harder, it should be louder in the mix. So to a degree, I've always had that audio aesthetic, but I think it's interesting that the surround, like the immersive, is going to take us deeper into that, and I hope people will explore that. I hope people will kind of, you know, back off their compression and let the music find its own space and let it breathe and let it kind of cohere, you know, rather than get a mix together by squashing everything and then pushing all of those kind of squash bricks in a row. It's, you know, finding a place for the music to ebb and flow and the dynamics to merge into each other. And the interesting thing for me is if the musicians lean into it, it should get louder. If they back off and play quieter, it should get quieter. I don't know why we've lost that, but I think maybe everybody will rediscover that if we can mix in 3 dimensions. I hope. I don't know. The way that you listen to a record is really different to the way that you listen to a concert. I always say this to my artists. Look, when you're making a record, you're in a way hedging your bets because you don't know how people are going to listen to it. They can listen to it from the speaker in their phone. They can listen to it through a fabulous hi-fi system, through crappy headphones or great headphones, you know. So there's a whole range of ways that people will listen to the music. So you mix an album, in a way hedging your bets. You mix an album and aggregate the best medium version of the record that's going to the different ways that people listen to it. In a live setting, you have a huge advantage. We know how people are going to listen to this mix, right? There's only one way people are going to listen to this mix. It's going to be in this room, and we get to control how much sub it has, how much bottom end, how much top end, you know, how loud it goes, the dynamics between songs. We get to control that. We control the listening environment. So therefore, ergo, it has to be a different way to mix because it's a different thing. We're not sending it out into the world hoping that people will listen to it more or less in a decent way. We know exactly how they're going to listen to it. So the mix, so we can control the mix and in a way be freer with the mix because we know the exact parameters within which people will listen to that mix. I guess so. You know, like look at TV. People 5.1's common in people's households now. It never really taken off with music, has it? You know, the quadraphonic sound systems when we were kids. You know, some people like that, but I don't know. I have no idea. Not my part of the process.